Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Teruvan Saranai. Good evening, Venerable Mahasangha, Sayales, and brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Today we will continue with the Ajjhattarammaṇā Tika, the internal object, Triplet. And we will be discussing about the Navatabha-Rammana, which we spoke of during the last 2 lessons. First, let's look at the 3 terms again. Ajjhattarammaṇā dhammā, states that have internal states as objects of thought. Bahiddhārammaṇā dhammā, states that have external states as objects of thought. Ajjhattabahiddhārammaṇā dhammā, states that have internal and external states as objects of thought. So we come back to the table that summarizes all the analytical states. Under Ajjhattarammaṇā dhammā, states that have internal states as objects of thought, we get the Viññānañcāyatanam, the base of infinite consciousness, Neva Saññā Na Saññāyatanam, the base of neither perception nor non-perception, together with their 30 Cetasika. These are the Ekanta Ajjhattarammaṇā dhammā. That means they always take an internal object as their object of thought. Then under Bahiddhārammaṇā dhammā, we get the 3 Ākāsānañcāyatana citta and the 15 Rūpāvachara citta excluding Abhiññā. We also get the 8 Lokuttara citta together with their 38 Cetasika. So these are the Ekanta Bahiddhārammaṇā dhammā. And under Ajjhattabahiddhārammaṇā dhammā, we don't get any Ekanta dhammā. And then under the Anekanta dhammā, Anekanta refers to the states that take internal, external or internal, external states depending on the circumstance. We get the 54 Kāmāvachara citta and the 2 Abhiññā. And you must note that the Cetasika will vary depending on the object of thought. So, for example, if you take the Ajjhattarammaṇā, the 2 Appamanya and Issa, envy, are excluded. Then under Bahiddhārammaṇā, avarice, Maccharya, is excluded. And finally, under Ajjhattabahiddhārammaṇā, both Issa, Maccharya and also Appamanya, all of these are excluded from the Cetasika. So today we will discuss the second part of this paragraph. Rūpāvacharaṃ chatuttam jhāna kusalatocha kiriyatocha. Fine material sphere, 4th jhana, wholesome and functionals. Now here what they refer to are the 2 Abhiññā, chitta, the kusala and kriya, the wholesome and functional chitta. Ime dhamma siya ajjhattarammaṇā, siya bahiddhārammaṇā, siya ajjhattabahiddhārammaṇā. These states can be stated as having internal, external and both internal and external objects. We'll first take the variety of potency of the 4th jhana, the Iddhividdha Chatuttam. This chitta can have internal, external and internal, external objects as their object of thought. The Iddhividdha Chatuttam has an internal object when it makes one's own body and mind the object at the time of bending the mind by body or body by mind, and at the time of itself creating forms such as a child's. Has an external object at the time of manifesting externally elephants and horses and the like, and has an internal external object at procedure, sometimes internal, sometimes external. Supernormal hearing of the 4th jhana. Tibba Sota Chatutta, has an internal object at the time of hearing its own abdominal sound and similar sounds related to one's own body, and an external object at the time of hearing the sound of others, and an internal external object by way of both. Knowledge of others' thoughts of the fourth jhana, Chetopariya Chatutta. Now here this jhana will always have an external object because it has others' thoughts for object. But there is no purpose for it to know its own thought. So this is important to note. Chetopariya, we are always considering others' thoughts as the object. Therefore, it's always an external object. Knowledge of one's former lives of the fourth jhana, Hubbe Nivasa Chatutta, has an internal object when there is recollecting of one's own individuality, an external object when another's individuality is remembered, or matter not bound up with the faculties, the anindriya baddha rupa, or the three concepts, nama, kasina, satta, paññattiyo, and an internal external object when remembering in both ways. Supernormal sight of the fourth jhana, Dibba Chakku Chatuttam, has an internal object when one's own matter, such as abdominal matter, attano, kuchigata, adi, rupa, dassana kale, an external object when seeing the remaining matter, avasesa rupa, dassana kale, and an internal external object when seeing in both ways. Knowledge of the future in the fourth jhana, Anagatangsa Jnana Chatutta, has an internal object when there is recollecting of one's own future aggregates, Anagata Kanda Anussarana Kale, an external object when recollecting another's future aggregates or matter not bound up with the faculties, Anindriya Baddha Rupa, and an internal external object when recollecting in both ways. Now we come to the summary of these Abhinya jhana. So as you can see, the Iddhivida Chatuttam, the variety of potency of the fourth jhana, the Dibba Sota Chatuttam, supernormal hearing of the fourth jhana, Dibba Chakku Chatuttam, supernormal sight in the fourth jhana. These can have internal and external objects as their sense object. When it comes to the Pubbe Nivasa Chatutta, knowledge of one's former lives of the fourth jhana, and Anagatansa Jnana, knowledge of the future in fourth jhana, these, in addition to those three objects, can also take an undefinable, navatabba object. And finally, the Chetopariya Jnana, knowledge of others' thoughts of the fourth jhana, will always take an external object as its object of thought. Now we will compare the same with the Atthasālinī Tika and the Paritthārammaṇā Tika. So here under the Paritthārammaṇā Tika, the Iddhivida Chatuttam can take a limited paritta or mahaggata, sublime object. And when it comes to Atthasālinī, it can be Attita, past, Pacchuppanna, present, or Anagata, future. Dibbasota is always paritta, always a limited object because it's sound. And it is always a Pacchuppanna Arammana, a present object. Dibba Chakku is also similar. It is always paritta and always Pacchuppanna. Pubbe Nivasanussati, the knowledge of one's former lives of the fourth jhana, as well as Anagatansa Jnana, can take any of the three: limited, sublime, illimitable, Paritta, Mahaggata, Appamana, and it can take any of the three the Pubbe Nivasa will always take either Atita or undefinable, whereas the Anagatansa Jnana will take future, Anagata, and undefinable. Then Cheto Pariyajnana can be Paritta, Mahagata or Appamana, and they may be Atita, Pachupanna or Anagata. Then, yes, so those are the differences that we find in the three triplets. We now come to the next section in the Ajjhattarammaṇā Tika, the Atthasālinī, the commentary chapter. Akinchanyayatana, the base of nothingness, Navattabbam, Ajjhattarammaṇā tipi, Bahiddhārammaṇā tipi, Ajjhattabahiddhārammaṇā tipi, cannot be stated as having objects that are internal, external, or both internal and external. Now let's look why the Akinchanyayatana is excluded here. The object of the base of nothingness is merely the disappearance of the internal state, and thus the non-acquiescence of internal, external, or internal-external state of the object. Thus, the base of nothingness should not be stated as having an internal, external, or internal-external object. So what is the object of thought of the Akinchanyayatana Chitta? The Akinchanyayatana arises in connection with the disappearance of Vijñānañcāyatana Chitta. So, Vijñānañcāyatana Chitta is a Ajjhattadhamma, and it is the disappearance of the Vijñānañcāyatana Chitta that is taken as an object by the Akinchanyayatana Chitta. So now we can't say that it's an Ajjhattadhamma because the Ajjhattadhamma has actually disappeared. At the same time, we can't call it a Bahiddhārammaṇā because it is the disappearance of an Ajjhattadhamma. So it doesn't fall into any of the two categories. So obviously, it will not fall into the third category as well because it's not falling into either Ajjhatta or Bahiddha. And that is why we say it's Navatabba. It cannot be stated as having an internal, external or internal-external object as its object of thought. Now the commentary further describes about this Akinchanyayatana Chitta. Therein, not only the jhana of the base of nothingness, Akinchanyayatana, has an undefinable object, but also its adverting, avajjana, its access consciousness, upachara chittani, etc., its object recollecting consciousness, the paccavekkhana chitta, and its unwholesome consciousness proceeding by way of enjoying, etc., its object, have undefinable objects, Navattabbarammana. So not only the Akinchanyayatana, but also there are other chitta that take an undefinable object. So we will discuss these in the next couple of slides. But all these are named along with it. Hence, they have not been taken separately. How then are they taken? This base of nothingness, Akinchanyayatana, and that consciousness which, as its precursor, arises and proceeds by way of adverting, avajjana, access, upachara, etc., should have one object, ekarammana, together with it. So, when it comes to the Akinchanyayatana, it's a jhana chitta, and it occurs in the in a cognitive process. So the basis for them to say that there are other chitta that do not have, that take a Navattabbarammana, is because the chitta, the consciousness that arises before the Akinchanyayatana in the cognitive process, must have one object, an ekarammana, similar to the Akinchanyayatana. So if the Akinchanyayatana takes the Vijñāna Apagama, the disappearance of the Vijñānañcāyatana Chitta, then the preceding consciousness also should be taking the same object of thought. So starting from the Manodvara Vajjana, then we have the Parikamma, Upachara, Anuloma, Gotrabu. So these are the Manodvara Vajjana is a Kriya Chitta, and the other four Parikamma, Upachara, Anuloma, and Gotrabu, those are Kamavachara, Jnana Sampayutta, Kusala, Chitta. Those will also take the same object of thought. So this is an absorption jhana process, the initial attainment of jhana. Here we have two processes mentioned. The first one is for one with average faculties. The second process is that of one of keen faculties. And the difference between the two is the parikama, or the preparation chitta. So the one with average faculties will have this additional chitta, whereas the one with keen faculties will go on straight to develop the upachara, or the access consciousness. So here we get the bhavanga chalana, the vibrational bhavanga upakcheda, rest bhavanga. Then thereafter we get the first consciousness of that absorption javana process, which is the manodvara vajjana, the mind-o adverting chitta. So this is the chitta which will first take the vijnana apagama, or the disappearance of the vijnana chayatana chitta as its object of thought. And the subsequent chitta, the parikama, preparation, upachara, access, anuloma, conformity, and change of lineage, gotrabu, these will also have that same object based on the principle of ekarammana, having the same object, having one object. And then finally we will get the jhana chitta. And in this case, we are talking about the akinchanyayatana jhana chitta.
Doctor, sorry, can I clarify one thing? The akinchanya yatana, does it take the disappearance of the vijnanancha yatana chitta or the akasanancha yatana chitta?
Did I say vijnananchayatana?
I think in the slide 14 we have vijnanancha yatana. I also didn't notice earlier. Only now. Slide 14, I think in the slide 14. The last part, the last point.
Yes, the vijnananchayatana. Yes, so it has to be changed to akasananchayatana. It's the disappearance of the akasananchayatana chitta. So here we need to change it to that, yeah. Yeah, akasananchayatana chitta. Thank you, Brother JJ.
Sorry, I also just noticed. Sorry about that. I just didn't notice it.
Okay. All that consciousness is said to have an undefinable object for two reasons. Because firstly, the undefinable state of the object is granted by such a method as this. Now here they are referring to something that was mentioned in the Atthasālinī Tika. Sometimes these risings of consciousness said in the triplet of the past object, Atthasālinī Tika, to be the sense sphere wholesome consciousness, Kāmāvachara Kusala, the unwholesome consciousness, Akusala, the 9 functional risings of consciousness, Kiriyato Nava Chittuppada. Here, as Kiriyato Nava, what we are referring to are the 8 Mahakriya, the Kāmāvachara Mahakriya, and the Manodvara Vajjana. The fine material sphere, 4th jhana, Rūpāvachara Chaturtha jhana, and here what is referred to is the 2 Abhinya Chitta, may not be said to have even a past, present, or future object. So here we have taken the slide from the Ajjhattarammaṇā Tika Atthakatha Khanda, and Here in the arrow, we have shown what was mentioned on the previous slide. Kāmāvachara kusalang, akusalang, kiriyato navachittupada. The sense sphere wholesome, unwholesome. 9 functional risings of consciousness. Rūpāvacharang chatuttanjānang kusalatocha kiriyatocha. Fine material sphere, 4th jhana, wholesome and functionals. Ime dhamma siya atithārammana, siya anāgatārammana, siya paccuppanārammana. Siya navatabba atithārammana tipi anāgatārammana tipi paccuppanārammana tipi. These states can be having past objects, future objects, present objects, and cannot be stated as having past, future, or present objects. And the second reason, because it is explicitly stated thus, the base of nothingness, akinchanyayatana, the 4 unincluded parts, magga, and the 4 fruition phala, these states cannot be stated as having past, future, or present objects. So here again, coming back to the Atthasālinī Tika, here we find the akinchanyayatana is mentioned as a state that cannot be stated as having past, future, or present objects. And connecting these two, they have come to the reasoning that not only the akinchanyayatana chitta, but also the precursors in that jhana process, as well as the Paccavekkhana, recollecting consciousness, then again the consciousness when either enjoying or having aversion towards and such like, when thinking about that sense object, at that moment those chitta will be taking a Nāratabba. Now, because the undefinableness of the object, Nāratabba, of the sense sphere, wholesome, etc., has been mentioned above in the Atthasālinī Tika, the past object triplet, with reference to their having one object, Ekārammana, together with the base of nothingness, Akinchanyayatana. Therefore, this last jhana, though spoken of in the triplet of personal object, Ajjhattarammaṇā Tika, as single, shows here also the undefinableness of the object, of the sense sphere, wholesome consciousness, etc. For is there any obstacle to these states of consciousness which have one object, Ekārammana, together with that jhana, in having an undefinable object? It is in this way, when this jhana is mentioned, that the adverting and other states are implied. Now we come back to the Atthakatha commentary chapter of the Ajjhattarammaṇā Tika. Rūpancha Nibbānancha Anārammana, materiality and final state of deliverance are without sense objects. So coming back to the states not obtained in this triplet, the Nāratabba pertaining to the Ajjhattarammaṇā Tika, the 3 Akinchanyayatana together with their 30 Cetasika. And the Manudvara Vachana, 12 Akusala, 8 Mahakusala, 8 Mahakriya, 2 Abhiññā. Here, under Abhiññā, what they are referring to are the Pubbe Nivasa Nussati Jnana and the Anagatansa Jnana, Kusala and Kriya. And the 45 Cetasika, excluding the 3 Virati, 2 Appamanya, Issa, Machariya. So these, all of these chitta, when they are taking the Vijnana Apagama, the disappearance of the Akasananchayatana chitta. And finally, Rupa and Nibbana, the 28 matter and the final state of deliverance, these do not take any objects of thought. But they are not chitta chetasika dhammas. Therefore, they are called anārammana. So with that, we conclude our discussion on the Ajjhattarammaṇā Tika. Now we will move on to the exercise, and that is to categorize the analytical states of the Ajjhattarammaṇā Tika internal object triplet according to Khandha, aggregates, Ayatana, bases, Dhatu, elements, and Arya Satya, noble truths. So coming back to our three terms, Ajjhattarammaṇā Dhamma, states that have internal states as objects of thought. Bahiddhārammaṇā Dhamma, states that have external states as objects of thought. And Ajjhattabahiddhārammaṇā Dhamma, states that have internal and external states as objects of thought. First, we will take the Ajjhattarammaṇā Dhamma, states that have internal states as objects of thought. Here we classify them under Ekanta and Anekanta Dhamma. Under Ekanta Ajjhattarammaṇā Dhamma, we get the Viññāṇañcāyatanaṅ and the Neva-saññā-na-saññāyatanaṅ together with the 30 Cetasika. Under Anekanta Ajjhattarammaṇā Dhamma, we get 54 Kāmāvachara Chitta. That means all 54 sense sphere consciousness. And the two Abhiññā, fifth jhana, Kusala and Kriya, together with 49 Cetasika. So here under Ajjhattarammaṇā Dhamma, all of the Dhammas are Chitta Cetasika. They are consciousness and mental factors. That means they are all Nama Dhamma. So these Dhamma are classified under 4 Khandha. Those are Vedana, Sanya, Sankara and Vijnana. 2 Ayatana, Manayatana and Dhammayatana. 8 Dhatu. So here we get the 7 Vijnana Dhatu starting from Chakku Vijnana right until Mano Vijnana Dhatu. And we get Dhamma Dhatu. So those are the 8 Dhatu. And we get 2 Arya Satya. We get Dukkha Arya Satya and Samudaya Arya Satya. So here we don't get any of the Lokuttara Chitta coming in. Therefore, we don't get the Magga Satya, as well as the Nibbana is a Anārammana Dhamma. So we don't get Nirodha Satya as well. So here we get only 2 Arya Satya. Now we move on to the second term, Bahiddhārammaṇā Dhamma, states that have external things as objects of thought. Again, here we get Ekanta and Anekanta. Under Ekanta Bahiddhārammaṇā Dhamma, we get the 3 Ākāsānañcāyatana Chitta and the 15 Rūpāvachara Chitta, excluding Abhiññā. The 8 Lokuttara Chitta, the supramundane consciousness, and 38 Cetasika. Under Anekanta Bahiddhārammaṇā Dhamma, we get all 54 Kāmāvachara, sense sphere, Chitta, consciousness. The 2 Abhiññā, 5th jhana, Kusala and Kriya, and 51 Cetasika excluding Maccariya. Now here again we get only Chitta Cetasika Dhamma. That means consciousness and mental factors only. So we get only the 4 Khandha, the 4 aggregates. And again, you will notice that we have the 8 Lokuttara Chitta because they take Nibbana. Nibbana is a Bahiddha Dhamma. So when it's Bahiddha, it will come under this section. So what are the Khandha Ayatana? So we get 4 Khandha, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara and Vijnana. We get 2 Ayatana. So the Ayatana will remain the same because we have only 2 Nama Ayatana, that is Manayatana and Dhammayatana. We get 8 Dhatu. So here again we get 8 Dhatu because we get all 54 Kāmāvachara Chitta. We get all 8 Dhatu, that is starting from Chakku Vijnana Dhatu until Mano Vijnana Dhatu, we get the 7 Vijnana Dhatu and we get Dhamma Dhatu. And finally we get 3 Arya Satya, Dukkha Satya, Samudaya Satya, and now here we get Magga Satya as well because the 4 Magga Chitta together with their Cetasika are included under this term. Now we move on to the final term, Ajjhattabahiddhārammaṇā Dhamma, states that have internal and external states as objects of thought. Here we don't get any ekanta Ajjhattabahiddhārammaṇā Dhamma, but we get only anekanta Ajjhattabahiddhārammaṇā Dhamma. And here we get all 54 Kāmāvachara Chitta, the sense sphere consciousness, 2 Abhiññā, 5th jhana, Kusala and Kriya, together with 48 Cetasika, excluding the 2 Apamanya, Issa and Maccariya. So again here we get only Chitta Cetasika, consciousness and mental factors. So we get only Nama Dhamma. And again we have only Lokiya Dhamma, that is we don't have any Lokuttara, we don't have any supramundane Dhamma here. So based on that, let's look at how we break them down. Again we get only 4 Khandha, because Rupa is not here, we get only 4 Khandha, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara and Vijnana Khandha. We get 2 Ayatana, Manayatana and Dhammayatana. Since we have all 54 Kāmāvachara Chitta, we get all 8 Dhatu, starting from Chakku Vijnana Dhatu until Mano Vijnana Dhatu. There are 7 consciousness elements and Dhamma Dhatu. And here we get only 2 Arya Satya, that is Dukkha Arya Satya and Samudaya Satya. Yes, with that we come to the end of our Ajjhatārammaṇā Tika. Even though we have a little bit more time, I would like to stop the class now because actually I'm down with the flu and I would like to rest a little bit. So if you have any questions, please forward them to this email address and then we can discuss them during the next lesson. Our next lesson will be on the 18th of January. It's now time to share merits. I would like all of you to join me.
那现在呢，大家来一起呢，跟老师一起呢做这个功德的分享。
Akāsattā ca bhummattā devā nāgā mahiddhika puñyantaṃ anumoditva chiran rakkantu sāsanam chiran rakkantu desanam chiran rakkantu mamparam idam me ñātīnaṃ hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo idam me ñātīnaṃ hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo idam me ñātīnaṃ hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamu satan samagamu hotu yava nibbana pattiya. Idam me punyang asavakya vahang hotu. Idam me punyang nibbanassa paccayo hotu. Mama punya bhagang sabba sattanang bhajemi. Te sabbe me samang punya bhagang labantu. Buddha Sāsanang Chirantittatu, Buddha Sāsanang Chirantittatu, Buddha Sāsanang Chirantittatu, Sadhu, Sadhu, Sadhu.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you have a speedy recovery.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Anumodana,
Sadhu,
Doctor.
sadhu,
Thank you for the
sadhu.
class.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.